3, 2, 1.
Hello, you good people. Thank you for joining us. This is Life on Earth. It's Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern, whatever it is your time. It's time to go. Let's make this happen. I am so proud to be with you today for Life on Earth. Amy, my delightful, gorgeous co-host, is proud to be with you. We got to talk about this.
I'm proud to be with Robert.
We have got to talk about this.
Yes, let's do it.
Today is Thursday, July 15th, 2021. How many times can I say 20? 2021.
Just say 21.
It just gets going. You just say 20, 24 hours to go.
Like you used to say 83, you just say 21.
I want to be sedated. In her speech, Philosophy Who Needs It, Ayn Rand told the 1976 graduating class of West Point Military Academy in regard to her philosophy. She said, formally, I call it objectivism, but informally, I call it a philosophy for living on Earth, unquote. That being the case, it stands to reason that other things being equal, someday we're going to do a whole show on other things being equal. But that being the case, it stands to reason that other things being equal, objectivists, fans of Ayn Rand, advocates of her philosophy and her ideas, should be the most successful, benevolent, efficacious, positive, gracious, cheerful, optimistic, happy people on Earth.
They should be cheerleading.
They should be cheerleading.
Yes.
They should be proud of who they are. Since we recently discussed ambition, we talked about how a life should have ambition, some degree of ambition, a substantial degree of ambition. And there's a range of reasonable ambitions, but you've got to have ambition in your life. And this week, Amy and I had the proud honor of hosting an episode of the Ayn Rand Center UK's show, The Daily Objective. The Daily Objective.
The Daily Objective.
I keep wanting to throw extra syllables in today. Proud to be hosting The Daily Objective. And since we spoke about the Cuban freedom protests, today I wanted to talk about a specific kind of ambition, one which we all hold, and an ambition which we all seek to increase. We talked about how, ambition needs to be placed in context. In a sense, it has a limit. There's a valid range. Some people are ambitious in regard to different things, but all of us have a certain amount of ambition. And then we have other values in our lives, rest and relaxation and contemplation. And of course, we did a whole episode on sex, but that was the other show. But there's one ambition that should have no limits. There's one ambition that should be absolute. There's one ambition, moral ambition, that should be unlimited. Moral ambition being the definition of pride, the virtue of pride. Now let's be clear at the outset here. We're talking about pride, the virtue. Not the narcissist's fake pride or the braggart's false bravado.
Pseudo self-esteem.
Yes.
Social metaphysician kind of thing. Yeah.
No, we're not talking about the bluster of the egotist.
Yeah, or the insecure person who is just looking for something phony.
We're not talking about the bluster of the egotist, but the moral ambitiousness of the egoist. About pride, Ayn Rand writes in her novel Atlas Shrugged, pride is the recognition of the fact that you are your own highest value. And like all of man's values, pride has to be earned. That of any achievements open to you, the one that makes all others possible is the creation of your own character. That your character, your actions, your desires, your emotions, are the products of the premises held by your mind, that as man must produce the physical values he needs to sustain his life, so he must acquire the values of character that make his life worth sustaining. That as man is a being of self-made wealth, so he is a being of self-made soul. Go to the Ayn Rand lexicon, look under pride, you'll see the rest of that excerpt from Galt's speech. That is what we are talking about today.
So we're
Real pride.
So we're talking also about this is pride as a virtue, as a basically not as a value to attain or to get at, but as a method in attaining those values.
Exactly right.
What value are you trying to go for when you are exercising the virtue of pride?
That's right. So this is an important distinction that Amy is pointing out. Pride can be used as a synonym of self-esteem, but for clarity, in the objectivist philosophy, we place pride with the virtues. The way I put it colloquially to myself as my own reminder is pride isn't something you get, pride is something you do.
Mm.
Or to be more exact, it's a stance.
Ah.
It is an approach to everything you do. Again, moral ambitiousness.
So it's a practice.
Pride is a practice. Pride is a virtue. Again, it can be used synonymously with self-esteem, but making that distinction is extremely valuable because pride and the other 6 primary virtues and all of the derivative virtues like courage and confidence are the means to the attaining of our values. Our values including our 3 primary values: self-esteem, rationale or reason, and purpose. You take those out of order and they get stuck at the end of your tongue. Reason, purpose, and self-esteem. So it's useful that Ayn Rand makes that distinction between self-esteem, the value, and pride, the virtue. Again, that's why I say pride isn't something you get, it's something you do.
And I just want to say that I'm extremely proud of Jonathan Honig, who has chimed in with a wonderful super chat.
Now, I have to say, Jonathan Honig on the super chat has been a great cheerleader for the show. Jonathan, I really appreciate you mentioning the show. I especially appreciate that Jonathan Honig, whose last name is occasionally mispronounced by some prominent intellectuals in objectivism, pronounces the name Nasser the only way it should be pronounced, which is, incidentally, Nasser. I also have to give a big shout out to Casperanza in the super chat. Big contribution, but also Casperanza, if you're not already following him on YouTube, this is a young guy. He's producing content, student of objectivism, or maybe he just calls himself an objectivist. Young guy just starting out and producing these videos. Good stuff. Check it out. Very interesting. His latest one on his rules for life is definitely worth watching. Some great insights in there. And especially because he approaches it kind of the way I do, which is from a wisdom perspective and not just from a philosophy perspective.
Right.
Actual rules to apply to the way you live your life, the style of your life. And I appreciate that.
Thank
Very
you,
cool.
Casperanza and Jonathan.
So yeah, we make that distinction between, again, pride, the virtue, and self-esteem, the value, and the one is the means to the other. But it was a fun thought as I went through the notes thinking, well, we talked about ambition is one of those some but any categories. You need some degree of ambition. How much depends on the context of your values or your other values, what it is you want from your particular life. But moral ambition, pride, does not have limits. These primary virtues, the 7 virtues of objectivism, there are more, but the primary virtues that Ayn Rand discusses in Atlas Shrugged, rationality, pride, honesty, integrity, productiveness, independence. And the crown of the virtues is, after justice, is pride. In fact, Aristotle originally called it the crown of the virtues. It is both the virtue of choosing to be virtuous, and as a value, as self-esteem, it is the reward of virtue.
Yes.
Why do we talk about this? Of course, objectivists know this, but we are in a culture, we're surrounded by calls for the opposite of pride.
Right.
Humility and sacrifice.
And unearned guilt.
And unearned guilt. Well, yeah, there's your humility. Unearned guilt. For good resources on that, see Dr. Ellen Kenner. Quick search for her podcast, The Rational Basis of Happiness. She will clear you of any of that, or maybe we'll do a future show on it. But yeah, the altruism of the utilitarians is pervasive. You hear about it in the effective altruism movement. How to be the most effective altruist you can be. Don't just sacrifice yourself, because if you're willing to support your own career and ambition, then you can sacrifice even more. So the effective altruists are willing to have you be rich and successful if that means they can bleed you even more. This is Peter Singer's philosophy.
The philosophy of the parasite.
Yes, yes. The utilitarians who see your only value in your utility to society.
You know, isn't that what a lot of people they're upset with other people for? Is that they say, "Oh, you're just selfish. You just look at other people to see what you can benefit from them.
Yes.
You know, what you can get out of them."
That's right. You violate Kant's prime directive, which is you should never look at another human being as a means, but only as an end.
Oof.
The kernel of truth, what made that believable, is that individual human beings are the only ends in themselves in the universe. But respecting that in others should mean realizing that the primary is respecting that in yourselves. There has never been a justification ever given, not a rational one, for elevating somebody else above yourself, for not placing yourself at the center of your hierarchy of values. It doesn't even make any sense to say, I value something other than myself.
Right.
Apart from myself, what are your values if it's not you living them, experiencing, valuing? You know, they say, and this would go into the kind of wisdom that, like that I mentioned, that Kasperanza is good at. You will do more for others than you will ever do for yourself. There are people who say that. I don't know that any objectivists would say that, but there is truth in them. Most people. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat, and Razi says, who mispronounces honing? Of course, he didn't say honing, he spelled it properly, honig, but a certain gentleman whose name reminds me of a river has often says honing. No idea why, unless he likes playing Scrabble and other word scramble games. But yes, those folks are out there. And but no, we will do more for others than we will ever do for ourselves. Curiously enough, that turns out to be true. For most people, they will do more for their family, for their children, some people for their pets, especially if you're a bunny owner. Bunnies are just the best.
Yes, they are. Thanks for the shout out to bunnies. Woo!
There is truth to that. We will do more for others than we will ever do for ourselves, in a sense, but will you do more for perfect strangers? Will you, as Peter Singer would request, give everything you can to random strangers, knowing that, you know, the $5 contribution that you put in the super chat that goes to the Ayn Rand Center UK could go to some charity in Africa or somewhere else where there are desperate needs.
It could go to the campaign finances of Joe Biden.
Oh, that would be a sacrifice.
Or Donald Trump.
So why are we willing to put money in the charity bucket at the cash register of the local restaurant to help out this young girl who has a medical issue or is just trying to earn her way through music school? And we're also willing to send money overseas when the 2003 typhoon tsunami kills 150,000 people in the Indian Ocean. But absent such emergencies, we don't give till it hurts. And the reason is we give to things that touch us. We give to things that matter to us, that affect our lives, that we see, that are visible to us. The example, and Yaron Brook. Oh, was I talking about Yaron Brook? What was I talking about Yaron Brook as? Can't be the guy who mispronounces Jonathan Honig's name. Jonathan Honig's name.
Okay.
Yaron Brook did do a recent podcast on effective altruism, and he gave Peter Singer's arch example. You're wearing a $500 suit, really nice suit, dry clean only. You walk by a fountain, you see a young girl is drowning in the fountain. You don't see her parents around, and really, best you can judge, you need to go in the fountain and rescue the kid, except you're wearing a $500 suit. It's dry clean, it's going to be ruined. So do you do it? Do you rescue the kid even at the expense of your $500 suit? Some people try to massage a question like this and say, well, the family would be so grateful, maybe they'll give you a reward. You don't know that. You're giving up the suit. You're giving up the value for somebody you don't know. Again, the answer to Peter Singer is that this touches you. It's in your life. It's now within your domain, your world, your hierarchy of values. It matters to you because it matters to you. Even the news about the 150,000 people who lost their lives and the million people who were looking to rebuild their lives in the Indian Ocean area, that news touched you. And it is right that you say, I'm not going to miss $20 or $100, the cost of a nice lunch. I'll send that out. And know that I'm part of a little bit of that rescue effort. It's a good feeling to be a part of that, to have that little impact on the world as it touches me, as it matters to me. So yes, we will do more for others than we will ever do for ourselves, but only others who matter to ourselves. There's no sacrifice there. There's no inversion of the hierarchy of values. And that too, living our values, is pride. Pride is the recognition of the fact that you are your own highest value. And like all of man's values, it has to be earned.
Well, can I interrupt for a second and
Please.
talk about a different definition of pride?
Yes.
Which is the Judeo-Christian definition of pride.
Isn't it one of the 7 deadly sins?
Yes.
Ooh, I like deadly sins.
They say pride goes before the fall, or pride goes before destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually listened to a YouTube video that described it pretty well, this Christian view, and this was from a Christian perspective. And the way that he was describing pride was not a genuine recognition of your own self-esteem, of your own self-worth, of your own empowerment in life, of your own sense of efficacy, your own pride in your work and your actions and your thinking and all the effort that you take to be a good person, to expand your world in that way, to engage with reality. It wasn't about that. The way he described it, he didn't say this, but it basically means pride means having an insecure impatience for a kind of pseudo self-worth.
Yes.
And the inability to value specifically to value your friends, your loved ones, the people in your life that you care about.
Yes. Bitter, fragile ego.
Yeah, exactly. A bitter, fragile ego in that way. And it's so sad. I just, every time I think of really dedicated Christians, I just think I feel like the only way I can think of them is they're heathens, because they haven't discovered morality. They haven't discovered, obviously a rational morality, but they haven't really discovered a morality that is consistent with the nature of a human being.
Yes.
So I'm like, wow, you folks are a little bit primitive there in your thinking.
It's primitive and contradictory.
Yeah.
And as rational people, it's something to be on guard for.
Right.
Because people will use your virtues against you, and they won't even be consistent about it, because they will tell you, their child does something good, accomplishes something in school or in their personal interests or their piano lessons, whatever it is. And they will say, young child of mine, you should be proud of yourself.
Yes.
At the same time as somebody will fail at something, and if they had any quote unquote ego about it, they will say, I hope you're proud of yourself, in just that tone of voice. It's an inability to understand that pride is a virtue. They have that sense you should be proud when you've achieved something. You should be proud when you've done something good.
Yes.
They have a loose idea that pride is moral ambitiousness, which it actually is. And at the same time, they use the same word and conflate it with, again, a false sense of self. It's small wonder then that people can't understand. You can't give a child self-esteem. We talked about participation trophies. You can't give a child a healthy ego. What you have to do is recognize his achievements and help him understand when he's earned pride.
Right. When he is the self-driver of his actions and choices, and he has that feeling of his own empowerment, his own power, and embracing whatever goal that he wants to embrace, not to get the A so that he can impress the other students or his teacher, but to get the A, not as necessarily a measurement of woohoo, I'm the honor student, but I've learned something that's actually useful, or I've developed a skill that is going to help me develop other things. So it's yeah, I'd like to talk about, I don't know what's on your agenda here there, Robert, but I would like to talk about things like imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Yes, this is actually.
What is imposter syndrome?
So basically, imposter syndrome is the feeling that you are an imposter. So like you just graduated, for instance, graduated from college or however, and now you are an intern. And now, okay, you got through that, but now you're going to get a job and they're going to actually pay you. And you feel as if you are not adequate to what their needs of you are, and that you're not really earning the paycheck that they're giving you.
It's an interesting idea because when people hire you, for example, out of college, all they see is the diploma and the grades, and you see every time you fell short, every time you weren't certain of what you were doing, every time an assignment ran late. And you know you were good enough to graduate, but you also see the balance, the weaknesses. And it's an interesting thing. You take on that first job, you have no idea what you're doing. And in many fields, the connection between what you learned in school and what you'll actually do on that first job are not obvious. In some cases, those connections don't even exist. And yes, you could have that feeling of these people think I can handle this job. I don't feel like I can handle it. I feel like an imposter. I feel like I'm not able to do the thing that they think I can do.
Yeah.
So what did you learn about imposter syndrome and looking that up?
Before we get into that, I just want to say thank you very much, Atlas Spoke, for the $5 super chat. Very generous.
Yeah, he says, I am proud of myself. I'm a selfish brat.
Before that, he says, reason works to the purpose of expressing, building, and proving one's self-esteem. Moral heathens are strangers to their own rational and heroic nature, the right to be happy, for Galt's sake. Yes, indeed. So imposter syndrome, I actually have some really good, I'm going to give credit to like kind of a life coach, or I'm not entirely sure how she describes herself, named Mel Robbins.
Oh, Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins is great.
Yeah.
After the show, not during the show, but after the show, look up Mel Robbins, MEL, and the 5-second rule. Good stuff.
Okay, good. So, so she has this question posed to her of this one lady who is a professional singer, and but she feels like she's an imposter, like she hasn't really earned her place, and she's very insecure in what she's doing currently. And so she says, always acknowledge the day that you're in. So in other words, the way that I put that is recognize the value of your own development throughout time. So she goes on, ask yourself, today, how far have I come? And I am a totally different, whatever it is, marketing professional, salesperson, professional singer, than I was a year ago because of all the failures I went through and all the skills I've learned or improved on and all the experiences I've gained. So I'm standing in this moment and closing the lag between my past self and my current self, and acknowledging all of the work that I've done in between. I think this is a really excellent perspective in terms of how to get out of the imposter syndrome, how to recognize your own worth. Another interesting example is I saw a meme. It kind of had this concept of you send somebody for you work freelance, for instance. You send a bill to somebody, to your client, for an hour of work, and you're charging them $200 or however.
Right.
And they say, that's an hour of work, really? $200? I am not paying this. Just an hour or a half hour or 15 minutes or whatever it was. And so the lesson here is that the value of your work shouldn't be measured in the amount of time that you spend on it, but in the amount of experience and development and skills that you gained throughout that time.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're highly skilled, your 1 minute of whatever you're doing is actually more valuable than if you were just starting out and you didn't have those experiences.
And there are so many ways to make that clear. If somebody says, I shouldn't have to pay you $200 for an hour of your work, ask them if a random stranger off the street, or even an absolute beginner in your field, could do what you just did for them. Incidentally, if they could, you might be overcharging, but that's not usually the case. It's fun. When I was in IT, my highest rate would be $120. That was usually after hours on site. And I had the opposite problem. I fell into the trap of thinking, oh, that's kind of a lot. And maybe I shouldn't charge them that much, or maybe I should be very careful about only charging them when I'm already in the door and actively working on their problem, because after hours work includes road time. And you don't want to make that mistake either. You don't want to sell yourself short or let anybody else sell you short. Yeah, when you're selling expertise, you're not selling time. Your hours are not the measure of the value. Again, imagine if a random person off the street with no idea what they're doing, or even a newcomer with very little idea what they're doing, could do what you did in that hour.
So in terms of your choices that you make, in terms of the choices that you're going to improve your skills, you're going to develop all of these things, you're going to spend hours learning a new program or learning a new code or learning whatever it is, reading books up on the subject and just developing a better sense of your field. All of that gives you a value that, a lot of people, if you're a freelance, don't see that, what you do in the background, what all of this moment has taken for you to actually perform this task. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective, because I really think that a lot of people grapple with this. I've grappled with this in terms of how to feel pride about myself and my work, so that I am not the same person I was, a year ago when I first started doing my couch to standing workouts, which some of you might recognize that I do. I just invite my friends and we go on Zoom and I help them work out, and then I work out. All of that time and effort and experience and being able to actually work through all of these exercises, all of this knowledge that I've gained, all of this automatization that I have, is just amazing. And I am absolutely proud of what I've done. I feel so much better in so many ways, physically and mentally, and I'm just super proud of that. So that's one thing I'm proud of.
Yep.
Hey, if anybody has...
And it's fun because we talked about pride on our 5 Minutes with Robert Nacer podcast.
Yes.
And we did that, I think, the third or fourth episode of our series. So it would have been just at the beginning of the viral pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And two things stood out for me listening to that show again is, one, we weren't very good. Well, we were okay, but the fourth time that you do something is not quite as good as the 71st time that you do something. And it's interesting, if you just get out there and get on it, and if you don't feel that proud of the first time, of those early times, of those rough drafts,
Right.
it's amazing what happens just by being persistent and by executing your passion.
Mm-hmm.
Passion and perseverance is the definition of grit. Exercise your grit and you will find the pride because you will earn it. The other thing that stood out is it was only a few weeks into the pandemic. We had no idea what 2020 was going to look like. And one of the things I have to say, especially to people who've stuck with us since then, but all the newcomers too, folks who come on as we've joined the Ayn Rand Center UK's roster on their YouTube channel, is, man, what we got through. I hope you're proud of yourself. 2020 was a hell of a year, capital H, hell of a year.
Hellish kind of year.
Yeah. First quarter of 2021 was no mean shakes either. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You got through it. Hopefully you got through it intact. Ideally, you got through it with some degree of graciousness, some degree of pride in how you behaved yourself,
yes.
how you conducted yourself, how you chose to fight some of the things that needed to be fought, and how you chose to handle some of the things that had to be handled. I'm pretty proud of how 2020 went, given everything. But it's really interesting to listen to last March's shows and how much we didn't even know. We talked about GlowCon 8, the Great Lakes Conference number 8 that would take place in the fall. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But then all of the things we did anyway in 2020. One of the things I talked about at the time as we were just getting into all of this is one of my own personal philosophies of life. This is not unique to me, but one thing that I always say to myself is, it's when things are at their worst that you've got to be at your best.
Mm-hmm.
There were some folks at the time, things being at their worst brought out their worst. Some people didn't handle things well, whether it was on the lock down everything and mandate everything side of things, or the how dare you tell me anything about what's going on out there as far as this virus and safety and any of that. Not everybody handled themselves as rationally as they might have, but it's when things are at their worst that you've got to be at your best. You know, you want to exercise pride, moral ambition. You want to be strong. You want to be efficacious. You want to be invincible. I always think of the John Mayer song, No Such Thing, when he advises us to stand on tables. And that's what I do. I've done that in a couple of years, but I've been known in restaurants and clubs to stand on the table. And the reason to stand on the table is it changes everything. If you've never done this before, you've got to do this at some point in your life. If it's a nice restaurant, you might be considerate and take off your shoes. So you're just standing in your socks. You think this is outrageous if you've never done it before, but there's a reason why there are songs that say, and when I stand on these tables before you, you will know what all this time was for. It's a thing to do. Okay, maybe you won't literally stand on a table, stand on your chair. Change your state, change your perspective, do something outrageous, something that's borderline unacceptable. It will remind you, as the song goes, I am invincible as long as I'm alive. Love that song, John Mayer, No Such Thing. I am invincible as long as I'm alive. That's kind of tautological. If something kills you, it means, oh, I guess I'm not invincible at that point. It's an important point, though. I am invincible as long as I'm alive. Make yourself bulletproof.
But folks, I can attest to you that Robert has stood up on tables and chairs in restaurants with people in them.
It sometimes makes people that you're with nervous.
It makes the waitress even more nervous.
It makes the waitress nervous. A couple times it made the waitress angry.
Yeah.
But it's funny because a couple of times it didn't, and there was no reaction. Usually in the less fancy places that you would go, like that one pizza place in Ann Arbor. Make yourself bulletproof, and more than bulletproof, because in meeting challenges, you become stronger. This is in our bones. literally in our bones. That's Wolff's Law. Wolff's Law states that bone in a healthy person or animal will adapt to the loads under which it's placed. It's why fitness actually makes you less fragile, or as Nassim Taleb would say, anti-fragile. Being strong is more than a stance, it's a stature, it's a program, it's an adventure, it's a journey. Nassim Taleb wrote Anti-Fragile, and he said, anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same, but the anti-fragile gets better. Again, that law that your bones get stronger when you work them out. You get stronger when you work them out. The same thing applies psychologically. Pride exercised increases exponentially. Being strong is more than a stance, but it is a stance. It is how you get there. One of my recommendations is give blood. I like to give blood. But the thing is, I also hate to give blood because I hate pain. I hate pain.
You do.
If you dislike pain as much as I do, you can use my favorite magic incantation, which makes me bulletproof. At a moment's notice, anytime I need it. My magic incantation is a phrase I used to hate. And I've found its magic. I have learned its magic. And here it is, 3 words. Bring it on. That's it.
That's a little bit different than hold my beer.
That's better than hold my beer. If you're about to give blood or about to do some other thing that is like when you go to the optometrist and they're going to do the puff test, the glaucoma test.
You stick your chin in the thing.
Put your chin here. Now keep your eyes wide open.
open.
We're going to do something that will make you close your eyes, but don't close your eyes. What? Wait, what?
It's going to make you jump and scream.
The magic 3 words. What are the 3 magic words besides I love you? And they are bring it on. And you will find it easier to keep your eyes open. Bring it on, and you will find it easier to take that needle in your arm and to sit there for 20 minutes while they vampire you and take a pint away.
Enough of that there, Robert.
Yes.
Actually, let's go ahead and just remind our wonderful,
Let's
lovely
remind our audience to support the Ayn Rand Center UK.
Yeah, I think so. That's a great idea, Robert.
So if you go to Ayn Rand Center, now it's center spelled British style. The link will be in the chat, but Ayn Rand Center, RE, UK.
Mm-hmm.
So go to aynrandcenter.co.uk. If I got that right again, I always get that backwards.
It's aynrandcenter.co.uk.
I did get it right. I got to say it enough, and then it rolls off the tongue. And then, of course, I don't notice when I get it wrong. And then click member at the top, and you can join. And there's 4 levels of membership. Each one has extra perks. Even the most basic membership not only supports the Ayn Rand Center UK, but gets you access to their Saturday study groups led by James Valiant. Amazing. They did, I think they might have wrapped it up, but they'll go on to another one, the Objectivism Through Induction series. James Valiant always startles me because he's a super nice guy, and then he starts talking philosophy, and you realize he's like Peikoff level understanding of this philosophy. He's amazing.
He wouldn't say that, I'm sure.
He wouldn't say that. He's extremely modest.
Listening to James is like being wrapped up in a blanket of love and wisdom.
which is why you don't expect that he's also stunningly intelligent. I mean, he's a bright guy. Sure, he's a bright guy. No, he's really sharp. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, you'll have access to that on Saturdays. You'll have access to the Sunday weekly objective show. You'll have access to all the chat that lets us know when the different clubhouse things are happening. You'll have access to, and this should cost a lot of money, Don Watkins communication boot camps, which happened just before this show. What do you mean you don't know about that? Oh, because you're not a member of the aynrandcenter.co.uk's/membership that would have got you a notification of that. No, it's really good stuff. Help them out. Become a member. Of course, you can make contributions here on the Super Chat. If anybody wants to throw a few more dollars in, thank you to those of you who already have.
Yes.
But again, we're just kind of stoked to be part of the Ayn Rand Center UK YouTube channel roster.
It's a good bunch of people.
It's kind of
good folks.
Well, I've been a student of philosophy, student of Ayn Rand's philosophy an objectivist, a student of objectivism. We can talk about that too, because that kind of ties in with pride. For, what is it now, 31 years? Since 1990, maybe even a couple of years before that. And back in the old days, if you wanted to find good objectivist content, you kind of had to wait as each thing came out. Somebody's publishing a book this year. Oh, good, there will be something later this year. Oh, somebody's putting out a new tape series. Well, it's a couple $100. I'll get that as soon as I can afford it. Nowadays, every day, there's quality, not just stuff, but quality objectivist content. And probably, I mean, the more than half of it has got to be just what is produced under the auspices of the Ayn Rand Center UK. So not to go on too long, but it's kind of amazing.
It is.
Especially considering that it's really only become a thing, you know, in the last year. It's just exploded. And gotta love that. So I mentioned the question of, well, being an objectivist and how long have I been an objectivist? So I've got to say something about that.
What is this there, Robert?
Yeah.
What do you have to say?
Well, in regard to calling myself an objectivist, it's like this. Pride is a virtue.
Mhm.
Self-esteem is the value. Pride isn't something you get, it's something you apply, something you exercise, something you do. You know, I call it a stance. I like the expression, I mentioned this in one of my early podcasts, and I stole it shamelessly from David Lee Roth. Be the verb, not the noun. Be the verb. As David Lee Roth explains, if you want to be an artist, don't worry about what you call yourself. Make art. Make art now. If you want to be a writer, be one. It's not about calling yourself a writer. It means write. Put pen to paper, fingers to a keyboard. Get some words out there. If you want to be a filmmaker, start making movies now. So to be an objectivist is not to wear a label or to pass a test. It's not even to learn the philosophy inside out, as important as that is. To be an objectivist is, in thought and in action, in theory and in practice, to be an objectivist. Do the philosophy, live this stuff. As I point out every time I say, well, why is the show called Life on Earth? This is a philosophy for living on Earth. If you do these things, you will be among the most successful, the most happy, the most benevolent, and the most proud people on Earth. So again, my message for today is pride is a stance. It's not just, I shouldn't say just, because as important as self-esteem is, it's not just self-esteem, it's the earning of self-esteem. It's not just being proud, it is taking action as a proud person. It is being morally ambitious. It is practicing moral ambition.
There's a part of the pride quote from Galt's speech that I just want to highlight here. The first precondition of self-esteem is that radiant selfishness of soul, which desires the best in all things, in values of matter and spirit, a soul that seeks above all else to achieve its own moral perfection, valuing nothing higher than itself.
Yes.
That's the money shot right there, folks.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes, although I still cringe whenever I hear the expression money shot. I know that's become kind of a normal expression, but I'm old enough to remember where that came from. So anyway, yes, that is the important stuff, the meat and potatoes.
No killing of my buzz there, Robert.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to harsh you there. Harsh your mellow.
Harsh my mellow.
Oh, well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for Ayn Rand Center UK is putting some lovely URLs into the chat here.
Yes. Incidentally, the last time I spoke to the Lord and Savior of the Ayn Rand Center UK, the guy who runs it all, he reminded me that we should mention if you want to see our other podcast. go to robertnacer.com and you can find out everything you want to know about 5 Minutes with Robert Nacer, which really should be called 5 Minutes with Robert Nacer and Amy Nacer.
Or 5 Minutes with Amy Nacer and Robert Nacer.
Yes. Or just 5 Minutes with Amy, which sounds far more compelling and provocative than 5 Minutes with me. But yes, go to robertnacer.com and you will find links to the show, links to the past 71 episodes.
Yeah, I am on every episode.
Amy has not missed a show yet.
There I am. And we talk more about wisdom in a general sense, not just in the objectivist sense. We apply objectivism to our views, but we go a little bit deeper and we kind of think, we try to, provide a firsthand approach to a lot of ideas out there from our own perspective.
There's a little more Nacery wisdom in there,
Yeah.
but mostly I would say it's a little sillier, a little lighter.
Yeah, it's funny.
We did episode 69, for example. I'll let you guess what episode 69 was about. So yes, by all means, please go to robertnacer.com. In fact, if you want to support the Nacer Project, if you want to support Amy Nacer and Robert Nacer, you can do that on top of becoming a member of the Ayn Rand Center UK. Go to robertnacer.com and there are links to our Patreon. You can become a monthly contributor.
Yes.
Or our paypal.me link, which, you can buy me a cup of coffee, although I've got one right now, but I'll save that contribution for the next one. Thank you very much.
You can purchase another spooky mug other than this, because I'm sure I need to collect more.
Now, there's an interesting philosophical question, and I'm not going to answer it, but I'm going to bring it up so that if you want to join us in our Clubhouse chat afterward, you can ask or even answer it. Can you be proud of a friend? Can you be proud of your country? Is it proper to be proud of your children? Proud of your husband or wife? My answer is yes. But when you say, I'm proud of my country, I'm proud of my children, or when you say to somebody, I'm so proud of you, you're saying something a little bit different. And it does involve pride, but it's not primarily pride for your accomplishments. It's a kinship. It's a pride of shared values.
Yes.
So I know certain people who are, especially people who are newer to philosophy, or young people, or people who are kind of old and crusty, will say, you can't be proud of another person. That doesn't make any sense. They need to reconsider what they mean. Again, pride can mean self-esteem. Pride can mean something other than the objectivist virtue of pride. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that or inappropriate about that. And so that said,
I just want to say that I am proud here of Jamie, who has
we have 500 Mexican pesos.
Yes.
I don't know how much 500 Mexican pesos is a lot, but it looks enormously impressive. And in the name of the Ayn Rand Center UK, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And Jamie says, I'm proud of finally starting to achieve success in my career after trying for almost a decade without seeing results. I almost gave up. And then I love this. He says, and this is a quote from Ayn Rand, never give up what you want in life. The struggle is worth it. This is, okay, now everybody's got to go to YouTube and watch the lecture, My 30 Years with Ayn Rand.
Yes, after the show.
In which Leonard Peikoff tells the story of when Ayn Rand said to him, never give up what you want most in life. The struggle is worth it. Jamie, thank you so much. I get choked up even just thinking about that.
Yes.
And it's magnificent to hear that you ran into exactly that. And I can tell you that I personally found both career and financial success very late in life, and went through a lot. I spent 16 years working in fast food restaurants, for example, trying to work my way through college, and then eventually broke into IT. And even then, real success, six-figure success didn't come until many years later. So I absolutely empathize with years and years without seeing results, almost gave up. And congratulations. Yes. Congratulations. I hope you're proud of yourself.
Yes.
And that is a great way to wrap up. If you have any more questions, I would encourage you to pop over to Clubhouse and join us there. We will, of course, be back next Thursday with another episode of Life on Earth. And again, thank you for joining us. It's always your chat that makes it worth it, knowing that you're out there listening. We're going to go over to Clubhouse. Join us there for the after show. Thanks again.
Thank you, guys.